We're live.
Hello, this is George.
And Bonnie. And it's Tuesday.
And this is a tiny road to Yeshua. Now, I realized last week we should have talked about Easter then, but I didn't.
That's all right.
We just had Easter, and I apologize. But with all my studying and not paying any attention to the calendar or about what's happening around outside, I never really realized that Easter was just around the corner. And I should have talked about that Easter stuff last week.
That's all right.
But I didn't. But here we are today. And what we call Easter has passed. Yet we feel we must state a few things that jump off the page at us.
Hey, Dallas.
There are places that strictly talk about Yeshua's resurrection. And you find them in Matthew 28 or Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke 24, and Yohan or John 20.
Hey, Rhonda. Hey, Rich. Hey, Sandy.
Boy, you're popping on like crazy. Still traveling, we'll watch later.
Okay,
all right.
Have a safe trip.
4 different writings about the same event. About the fact such so important event, you would think that would be pretty much the same in each one. Mm-hmm. But are they? Let's go over a couple of them. In Matthew 28:1, would you read that, sweetie pie?
After Shabbat, as the next day was dawning, Miriam of Magdala and the other Miriam went to see the grave.
Starts out after Shabbat, or after the Sabbath, they went to the grave. This is one place that every Bible that we looked at refers to the Hebrew knowledge and understanding of Shabbat, or the Sabbath.
Hey, Tina.
See, most English translations state at dawn on the first day of the week. That's the English translation. Now, what all Christians pretend like that's what they follow. The first day of the week in Hebrew is what? Sunday. Their Shabbat, or Sabbath, is Saturday. Actually, from sundown on Saturday is when their Shabbat starts. So the first day of the week would be Sunday. Yet in the Roman, or what do you call that calendar that they had? The Gregorian type of calendar, Sunday is the 7th day of the week. That's the Christian Sabbath or Shabbat day. So with that statement, even through Easter, even though Easter is celebrated on Sunday, the first day, not Monday. So, what does that tell us? It illustrates the Hebrewness of Scripture. And the actual writing was in the Hebrew language. Mm-hmm. Both what we call the Old Testament and the New Testament should be classified one book, the Bible, and not even separated by those 2 words, old and new. Mark 16, 1 through 8.
Mark 16, 1 through 8?
Yep, I'm going to make you read a lot.
Wow. Okay. When Shabbat was over, Miriam of Magdala, Miriam, the mother of Yaakov, and Shulamite, brought spices in order to go and anoint Yeshua. Very early the next day, just after sunrise, they went to the tomb. They were asking each other, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance to the tomb for us?" Then they looked up and saw that the stone, even though it was huge, had been rolled back already. On entering the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right, and they were dumbfounded. But he said, "Don't be so surprised. You're looking for Yeshua of Nazareth, who was executed on the stake. He has risen. He is not here. Look at the place where they laid him. But go and tell the Talmudim, that disciples,
Talmudim, yeah.
especially Kepha, that'd be
Peter,
that he is going to the Galilee ahead of you.
Galilee.
You will see him there, just as he told you." Trembling but ecstatic, they went out and fled from the tomb, and they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid.
Now, most writings go all the way from 1 to 20 when you read that in the churches. That's interesting. But 1 to 18 talks about going to the tomb. It states very early the next day, just like the other one, they went to the tomb. The next day after their Shabbat was over at night, which was the next day would be Sunday. Now, verses 9 through 20, we found out, were actually added later on, and that wasn't in the original scripture. So, with somebody just adding something on that Mark never wrote, they said that the style of writing from 9 through 20 is so different that they know that Mark didn't write it. So when preachers preach that part in the scriptures, they're taking the word of something that somebody added later on. So that's why we didn't go through 9 through 20.
Fascinating. I never knew that. Hey, Marge.
All right. Now when one studies Luke, you need to go to Luke 23:54 through 24:1.
54, right?
Yes.
It was preparation day, and a Shabbat was about to begin. The woman who had come with Yeshua from the
Galilee
followed. They saw the tomb and how his body was placed in it. Then they went back home to prepare spices and ointments. On Shabbat, the women rested in obedience to the commandment. But the next day, while it was still very early, they took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb.
To really see the Hebrewness of that writing, the writing starts out, it was preparation day. That day is when food is cooked and all the preparations are made, so no work is done on the Shabbat.
So
the Shabbat, that's their holy day.
So they did all the prep for the eating and everything that was going to take place prior to the beginning of
I have
Shabbat.
read that they have one example of where they can do something, but I can't remember what it was. And there is something, and I'll have to look that up, but in the back of my head, I remember that there is something that they can do. Okay. But these people had preparation day for their Shabbat.
Hey, Jim.
Why did they rest on the Shabbat or the Sabbath? Read the next section.
Oh.
No.
I don't know where I'm reading.
Exodus 20.
No, you didn't say that.
Okay, read Exodus 28 through 11.
Okay. Remember the day, Shabbat, to be set apart for God. You have 6 days to labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Shabbat for Adonai your God. On it you are not to do any kind of work, not you, your son, or your daughter, nor your male or female slave, nor your livestock, and not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates of your property. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, the sea and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. This is why Adonai blessed the day, Shabbat, and separated it for himself.
What she just read is what we classify as one of the 10 Commandments. That reading shows that they observed the Shabbat. And why? On preparation day they worked. That's what it says. But not on their Sabbath or their Shabbat.
I didn't realize that's what broke down into the 10 Commandments.
Luke 24 started out, but on that next day, and that's what the complete Jewish Bible says, in translations it states in the English version, on the first day of the week, like I said, after another example of the flow of Hebrew all the way through the scripture writing, as far as we're concerned. Now, I think I hit this way.
Hey, Margaret Ann.
She's watching?
Yeah. Well, either
on TV or... I don't know if I'm on TV, I should get royalty. Yochanan, John, writing is in 19, verse 40.
They took Yeshua's body and wrapped it in linen sheets with the spices, in keeping with the Judean burial practice. Just that one verse, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Verse 40 states they wrapped Yeshua's body in linen sheets with spices in keeping with the Judean burial practices or custom. We noticed in Matanyahu, nor in John or Yochanan, do the women go to the tomb to prepare the body with spices. Yet Mark and Luke, the women brought spices. The disciples who were there state he was wrapped in linen and spices in preparation, as was the custom of the day for burial. So Matthew and John both state that. They don't state that the women went there to put spices on them. But Matanyahu and Yochanan state that he wrapped his body in sheets. And John even states with spices. Who do you think, what do you think about after 2 days of laying there in the tomb, would you want to go in and use spices then? Or at the time of wrapping the body? We know that a lot of services state the women went with spices, as in Luke 24 and Mark 16 state. They state that so you get the idea that he must not have been prepared with spices, so they came with it. Has anybody else ever caught that in those 4 verses? 4 simple explanations of Yeshua's burial. And then, did you catch on the first day of the week? So it had to be a heap. I'll get into it. I'm getting ahead of myself. But even this burial was in keeping with the Hebrew custom, wrapping the body with linen and spices. Those places of Scripture should show us that even in death, our Messiah was buried with or by the Hebrew custom And the rising was done on the first day of the week. Not with what our calendar would be, but how the Hebrew calendar states it was the first day, Sunday. And I think that's why we have resurrection on Sunday, Easter Sunday. Not Monday, in keeping with the Hebrewness all the way through the scriptures. If one reads scripture with only the knowledge of today, one would surmise that he rose on the first day of the week. If they didn't know anything about the Hebrewness of scripture and didn't ever go to an Easter Sunday service, he would have thought that he rose on the first day of the week. And everybody had ever heard a preacher or ever seen a calendar or really lived in society, he rose on Monday unless you're influenced by a teacher, preacher, or denominational philosophy. I hope you people understand where I'm going with this. So without realizing it, most so-called Christians celebrate the actual Hebrewness of Scripture while trying to deny the same with their brainwashing of religion. Not only was our Messiah Hebrew his whole life, his walk, whom he actually came for, his death was foretold in the Hebrew writing of, I believe it's Isaiah. His burial was in the custom of the Hebrew burial, and he rose on Sunday, the first day of the week. All pointing to not only his Hebrew life, but the Hebrewness, I don't even know if that's a word, but the Hebrewness of all Scripture. See who just popped on?
Yeah, he's been there.
Yet, we have never heard or seen when any preacher directs his flock about that essential point. Now, you know that when they go through college or through their studies and learn what they have to learn, you would think that the teachers and preachers that taught them would have showed them the simplicity of what that's really saying. But like I just read, we have never heard or seen when any preacher directs his flock about that essential point. You might say, if and why would they take the chance of truth getting in his way of their brainwashing of his congregation? Sad, isn't it? To think they feel they have to, they have no alternative. After all, what preacher would stand in front of his congregation and state his name was, is, and will always be Yeshua or Yeshua? By no other name can one be saved. The Messiah stated that, in my name. Then he would have to admit he has led his people wrong for all those years by using a name that isn't even 400 years old. And I guess that's our main point in the tiny road to Yeshua. The one name that billions, that one that's 400, or that name that's about 400 years old, will be that one name that billions will be hollering when our Messiah, Yeshua, will state, I never knew you. Away from me, you doers of evil. That's what the scripture says. I believe it's in Matthew 7:21 through 23. See, I'm not that smart. But I have been shown the simple things of Scripture to confuse the wise. To tell the truth, with all those brilliant people, no wonder they're rejecting everything we say. Scripture never states where Yeshua went out and did carpenter work, dug ditches, or whitewashed or power washed the house. Yet he represented truth, didn't he? I don't know how to say this next part. Our job is a full-time job. Not to work with our hands, but with Scripture. To present someone you most likely never heard of, or what wasn't represented strongly enough about. The importance of his name, and we mean his real name. See, I can't worry about you or who you believe in. That's your business, not mine. Yet your instructor will one day be judged for his lack of real truth. Now think about it. That doesn't and won't help you one iota. You're still doing what he wants you to do. Use that name that's not even 400 years old. So study and learn what the truth is and work with or work for Yeshua and his Father. The beautiful part is, now this is, I really mean this. The beautiful part is, I can't care, worry, or fret about you. I'm believing for the only one I can control, and that's me. See, I really truly believe I can't control her or Brother George that's sitting across the table. You and they are on their own. We can't believe for you, don't want to. You have to stand on your own 2 feet and walk with Yeshua. Hear me. And walk with Yeshua or work against him. It's really that simple. Either Yeshua rose to be with his Father, or you work against even his name to be with the in-group of all his imitators. Way over 2 billion strong. And now not only changing his name, but to change Scripture to fit your desire, not Adonai. Truth. But hey, you get your truth any way you want. That's your way, right? Okay. Yeshua rose for all, but most have rejected him. That's the truth. He died for you. Do you even use his name or an imitation? Our Messiah died a very cruel, painful death, then rose to be with his Father. The amazing thing is, he knew that his pain was going to be a cruel act. To be honest, most people never really comprehend his act of obedience. Never will. It seems that people know what happened, but see only the beauty of it. See, when he was crushed, when he was beaten, it was for you and me. When he went to that execution stake, it was for the people who believed in him. When they were whipping him, it was very painful. He was being human. But I know, come on, George, talk about that beautiful part, the part that makes people happy. He rose, and he did. But since he's risen, let me ask you a question. Since he's risen, how many times have you even used his real name? How many times have you just talked to the Father about his Son?
And you know, one thing that you've said, and we've said in the past when you were talking about here, about comprehending his act of obedience.
Yeah.
He had a choice all along not to.
Well, he was, people, they've stated that he's the second Adam. Adam had one choice too, and he made the choice. Yeshua had a choice, and he chose to do what he was supposed to do. Okay, I'm going to end this. Like we said, he rose for all, but almost all reject him. That's the truth. It's not the beauty of the cross or the execution stake or his risen. He rose for all, but most reject him. That's the truth. What about you? On Easter, what we call Easter, Resurrection Sunday. Turns out after I studied, it was a Hebrew wording that we've tried to change into a Christian event. It was foretold in the Old Testament. And now we like to think of it as a Christian activity. But it was Hebrew. He was. Still is. Always will be. And when he comes back, he will come back to Israel. He won't come back to any place like the U.S. or some Virgin Island somewhere. So, that's the truth. He rose for all. But how most reject him. Like I said, that's the truth. And what I ask is, what about you? You accept him? You reject his truth. Thank you.
Heavy duty. Heavy duty. So, what you
That's
got
it for
on
today.
Store for next week?
I have been reading something in Isaiah that, as I'm going to talk about next week, I have something total. I know I was going to talk about the individual stuff, but next week I started reading and writing something in Isaiah, and I read part of what I wrote to my sweetie here. Oh, this for you, Margaret. Margaret Ann. That, and it's going to be in Isaiah. So when you study this week, when you study this week, study Isaiah 50 to 60. Should be somewhere in there.
Oh, you're not giving some more detail?
That will give you some homework.
No more detail than that, huh?
No.
Oh,
thank you for popping on. Thank you for coming on and watching. I hope that the talk tonight got you thinking more about the Hebrewness of what Yeshua did, what God did through him.
Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week.
See you next Tuesday.